Hey, Nekias, I'm going to ask you straight up. Are you sick of Damian Lillard at this point?
I'm sick of the Damian Lillard stories and the rumors and stuff. Damian Lillard has been very consistent across multiple years that he wants to remain a Portland Trailblazer. He wants to win in Portland. And until Damian Lillard says, I want out, I don't want to hear anything else. Like, even the meeting that was going to be had with him and his agent and stuff, it was, hey, what's going on here? With, I would imagine, the lean of, if y'all can get this to work, I want to stay. And so I'm just tired of the constant updates. Like, he doesn't want to go anywhere.
So you blaming the media or NBA Twitter for that matter?
It's more so that, like, I feel like I understand you have to chase that story because Damian Lillard is a superstar in this league, and him ever requesting a trade could just shift things in the league overall. So I get it. But if he's been this consistent across multiple years, and every sit down someone has with Dame, it's a question about, hey, how do you feel about it's a loyalty question to Dame. It's like, he's talked about this already. We don't have to keep rehashing this until he says something new.
So I agree with part of that. I agree that, like, let's just leave it alone until something substantially changes or significantly changes. But I don't know how consistent he's actually been. Because I think he's dropped hints or even, I don't know, given lists of teams that, hypothetically speaking, if he were to be traded, he'd be interested in going to, like Miami and Brooklyn. And I think, see, he wants it both ways. And let me say this, start off with this, Nekias. Like, I love Damian Lillard. I cape up for Damian Lillard. But I think Damian Lillard, intentionally or not, is actually a branding and marketing genius. Because Damian Lillard is winning without actually winning. So kind of sort of to your point, he wins the rumor mill. He wins in the media. He wins NBA Twitter. He wins the barbershop, water cooler, wherever you like to debate. He wins that. And here's how he wins. He wins because if he never leaves Portland, he can't lose, right? Oftentimes the hypothetical is better than the actual outcome. And what I mean by this, think about Michael Jordan, right? And I'm a Jordan sycophant, all right? I'm one of those guys. Like, you can never say that Michael Jordan would not have won 8 straight championships had he not retired. He probably wouldn't have, but it adds to the mystique and the mythology about what could have been. With Damian Lillard, so long as he stays in Portland, people will forever say, well, he never had a great team around him, or what would have happened if he'd have teamed up with some other superstars, or if Portland would have managed to get superstars to come and play with him. You can always say that, which adds to his legacy more than going somewhere else and it not working out. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. This quote, I read this, this is from The Ringer, but he said it to The Last Stand, okay? And he said, they can trade me somewhere that we all say is a contender. But what is it going to cost for me to get there? How is it a guarantee that we're going to be playing in June when I get there? How do we know if everybody's going to be healthy? How do we know if it's going to work out? And then Chris Haynes, who's very close with Lillard, said the other day he doesn't want to be on a top-heavy team. Well, you know what, man? Respectfully, you just don't want to win. And that's okay. That's okay. He doesn't really want to win. And he wants to win in Portland, I guess, but he doesn't really want to win. He's not desperate to win. Because if he were desperate to win, and for that matter, Nekias, if Portland really wanted to win, that meeting that they had on Monday would have been, hey, let's go our separate ways. Trade me, or you know what? I'm so glad you said that, because we would really like to trade a 33-year-old guard who's not getting any younger while he still has value. That's what they both should say. When I was talking to Benny Goodwill last week, we invoked Gladys Knight, and neither one of us wants to be the first to say goodbye. That's not what this is. Neither one of them actually want to break up, because neither one of them actually want to win. It's a marriage of comfort and convenience, Nekias.
Woo. Okay. Did not have this one on the bingo card. I hear you. I would say it's a pretty compelling case. I can't go as far as to say Damian Lillard doesn't want to win. I will say, I guess if I can meet you in the middle, Damian Lillard wants to win his way. And I think his preferred way is to win in Portland. They want him to build again, he doesn't want the super team. Like, I think that's a fair thing to say,
but let me interject here, because you're right. I don't want to say he doesn't want to win. He's one of the ultimate competitors in this league. And I told you, I love Damian Lillard. I really do. But I say this to my AAU team, and I've said this to people professionally. I can't want something for you more than you want it for yourself. And the reason why Damian Lillard is trending every day on Twitter is because people want to see him win. Finish your thought, if you don't mind. Don't lose your thought. Finish your thought, but also then tell me, what is the transaction or transactions that the Portland Trail Blazers can execute this offseason to get them closer to contending for a championship? That's why I said neither one of them really wants to win, because they're not going to win together in Portland.
I got you. I guess just to complete the thought, again, I think he wants to win his way. And I think it's also fair for him to not want to be on a quote unquote super team in light of the conversations, however much stock you want to put into them. And for me personally, I just do not put stock into them. But in light of the conversations surrounding like Kevin Durant and the way that he's won in Golden State, I think if he looks at that and it's like, well, y'all want me to leave because you want me to win and you want me to get this legacy boost. Kevin Durant did that, and y'all are talking about how illegitimate his rings are. And again, and again, me, Nekias Duncan, I do not subscribe to that. Kevin Durant is one of the 15 or 20 best players I've ever seen. He was the best player on those. Like, I don't.
But that is the conversation, right?
Yeah, that's the conversation. So I understand Dame saying, okay, one, I just love it here and I genuinely want to win here. Two, it's not a guarantee for me to win. And three, even if I win, I may not even get the love and acclaim that y'all think I deserve if I win, because then the conversation may just shift to, well, you only won because you left and you couldn't do it by yourself. You're not Stephen Curry. And it's just like, if that's, like, if that's what it's going to be, like, yeah, why wouldn't I just be secure in myself and prioritize what I want and how I want to do it, and ultimately become one of, if not the greatest player in my franchise's history? I have proven that I am a Hall of Fame caliber player. I was voted on the top 75 list, which, brief aside, not that I super disagree with Dame's selection. It's weird to see Dame on that and not Dwight. That's just a whole nother thing. Dwight got disrespected with that list. But anyway, I understand Dame, like, all right, I'm cool. Now, to the Portland side of things, I'm with you. I do not see a feasible path to them building a winner around Damian Lillard. And I don't think that's Dame's fault, but just in terms of the assets they have, the current personnel that they have, ultimately, if they could have found a trade with like 3 and Anthony Simons or whatever the case may be and got a legitimate superstar in the building, they would have done so, because that's what Dame wants. The fact that they could not and they prioritize a long-term viability of Scoot, who I think is going to be a star.
Right.
I think that's writing enough on the wall. Like, hey, we don't think this may not be what we want, because they would have just pushed that chip in if they really felt comfortable that what they were bringing in was going to be enough to help Dame. And if that duo, whether that was Pascal Siakam or whatever the case may be, if that was going to be enough to get through the West. And so I don't really see the path. Like, I think if I'm Portland, I make the executive decision, but I also say that as someone who is not in the organization. And it's not just trading Damian Lillard. It's, we are trading a franchise icon who has embraced our franchise and community in a way that no other superstar has.
They don't want to be vilified.
After his best season ever. And so, like, yes, it's smart to trade him at the peak of his value, in my opinion. And yes, if I was running things, or if I'm just doing a my league on 2K, I absolutely flip Dame and I start the thing. But there are so many outside factors to where that just isn't feasible unless it's just, Dame, you have to ask. I think that's how you end up in this feedback loop. And that goes back to my original point. This isn't new. I don't want to hear about this anymore. Like, both have kind of planted their feet in this. I don't think it's changing. So I don't want to hear anything until it actually does.
So you said everything I was saying except smarter and more and with a better tone. Because, like, and that's why you here. Because it's like, look, everything I was saying is not a criticism as much as it is an observation of the situation. And you, like I said, I think we're saying very similar things for the same reason. Because if you're Portland, Damian Lillard puts butts in the seats. You can sell Damian Lillard. You can remain somewhat relevant. You can compete, if not contend. You can compete. Okay, and you have that, and it's just this perfect Reggie Miller in Indiana type love story where he stayed there his whole career and he's beloved. So for the same reason that they don't really want to trade him, when the smart move would be to trade him, and then is comfort. The same reason he don't want to be traded. He loves it there. He likes being the bus driver, I believe. And I don't know Damian Lillard. I think I've run into him a couple of times. So I'm speculating here. He likes being the bus driver, even if that bus ain't going nowhere. you know? And so he could always say, it's my team. I have my run of this place. Come and build around me. And I'm glad you brought up Durant. He can be the anti-Durant. I've said this a few times. He has a certain level of credibility, call it street cred if you want, that Durant will never have. In large part, and I'm with you, I don't subscribe to the, Durant, was just bandwagon hopping on, on the Warriors bandwagon to go get rings and ring chasing. But him leaving the team that blew a 3-1 lead for the 73-win Warriors, who had already won a championship without him, is a set of circumstances that may never be repeated. So I don't think every super team move is created the same. And right. I would like to think that people are more sophisticated in 2023 when it comes to NBA conversations, even though I know, look, you're like, nah, I don't know about that, Mike.
We should be. Thinking, we absolutely should be.
We should be. But whether you join a team, whether you are traded for, or whether the organization brings in the personnel via the draft or free agency, no superstar has ever won without great talent around them or a great team around them, okay? Jokic was a 2-time MVP, and he won his finally when Jamal Murray stayed healthy and kept ascending. So everybody needs at least one, if not more than one, sidekick, okay? So, and even in the case of the Heatles, it was Wade County until they brought in LeBron, and Dwayne Wade was like, nah, this is your team, boss. Lead us there. And so that dynamic is so played out when it comes to like, well, whose team is it? Well, if I want the super team to come to me. Bro, it don't matter. But that's what I'm saying about Dame is it's like he can always hang his hat and his reputation and his legacy on what could have been versus, and you hit the nail on the head, if he goes somewhere and like he said, it doesn't work, then he's holding that L as opposed to being able to hold on to one of the greatest players, a beloved player who never won a championship, but did not try to take the elevator, was willing to take the stairs. But what I wonder, though, just looking at Twitter, is if a lot of people, instead of looking at it the way you are, Nekias, where you're looking at it like, hey, this is our fault for having conversations that he's already said where he stands, or our fault for speculating on something that hasn't changed, it feels like some people, both in mainstream and social media, might be looking at it like, Dame, make up your mind. You know what I mean? Like, what are you waiting on? Why haven't you pressed the issue? Why are you waiting around, reportedly, to see what Portland does in free agency when you already know what time it is? Does it not feel like that to you, and just in your observations of the landscape, the conversations?
No, I think that portion of it is fair. And I think, to the podcast comments where he's listing like Miami or Brooklyn as potential destinations if he ever were to get traded, like, one, just a very specific question tossed his way.
But so you ain't got to entertain it, though.
Yeah, you don't have.
But you ain't got to entertain it.
That's gonna be my next point. Like, yeah, he could have shut that down if he wanted to, and the fact that he didn't, like, based on the history, it felt more like, let me throw this out here because I know how they're gonna react. Let me put as much pressure as I can on the organization without putting pressure on them. Like, that was my read on it. Like, hey, I don't really want to do this, but just to float out, hey, I am thinking about this if y'all don't make the move. And that's where we get also more of the rumblings and reporting, like, hey, we're trying to see what you're going to do at number 3. Are you going to trade this? We really want you to get a star talent in here for number 3. And then they draft Scoot, and then you immediately get the report, oh, they haven't talked in a few days. And then it's, oh, we about to have this meeting on Monday. It's interesting to me. But again, I think the harder parts is Dame wants to be there, and he wants them to build this around him. That part's been consistent. So that's why I kind of read past some of the hints that have been thrown, because I just kind of at this point, I just read those as leverage plays from him. And like, I may just be wrong on that, especially if he ends up eventually being traded this offseason or next offseason. I may just have to hold the L. But based on everything that we've heard from him directly over the last few years, that's why my mind immediately goes to, I'm not feeding into this as a trade plea. I think this is very much just leverage that he's trying to exert.
Sure. So he's trying to exert leverage on an organization that, even their best efforts may not get him closer to a championship. He just wants a shot. He just wants to be in the conversation, So this is about the outside more than the inside, because as you pointed out, the inside, both sides have been consistent. We want to keep Dame here. We want to build around him. I want to be here. I want them to build around me, right? I don't think they're ever going to win, which is why I started out by saying they don't really want to win. Because if they really wanted to win, it's a part. It's a part. Because realistically, they're not going to win there, and both parties should know it by now. So I think the conversation where you're going, and where you are, and where I think maybe we should be, is just whether or not that's okay and we should be accepting of it. Because why do we, as I said earlier, why do we want something more for Dame than he seems to want for himself? Because he doesn't want a ring at all costs. We want him to want a ring at all costs, only, as you said, to go back and say, well, you had to go join up with Jimmy Butler to do it. You know what I mean? Because some people will do that. But I don't think as a player you can worry about that. I think if you want a championship, then you're desperate for a championship, then if it means moving on from the only organization you know or have known, I think you should do that. But if you're not desperate for a championship, if it's not the end-all be-all, if you only want a championship, if it comes in a certain package and under certain circumstances, as in Portland, with players coming to me and following me and getting on my bus, then that's certainly his prerogative, but that in all likelihood will leave you ringless. And is that okay by the rest of us? Are we going to still be able to look at Damian Lillard as an all-time great player whose values differed from ours? Is that okay?
It should be okay. And I think this kind of gets into a deeper rings culture conversation and how things have just shifted over the last 10, 15 years. And I think Dame stands as an interesting foil against that. No, I'm great. You're going to know I'm great. I'm going to have these moments. I want to become my franchise's best or greatest player. And even if I don't win, my talent in my overall run is going to be undeniable. And I think him also being steadfast in exclaiming how much he loves being where he is, how much he loves his path and doing it that way. It's hard not to respect that. We should respect that. We should be able to evaluate, okay, Dame is here on the all-time point guard list because this is what he did on the floor. And if you are using rings as a tiebreaker, I think
that ain't how it works. Yeah, exactly. I'm about to say the rings will come into the conversation.
Right. You can't completely excise rings. You should never do that. I do think the way the conversation shifted, really, I guess you can go back to the big three, Boston days, I guess, in 08 or whatever. But from 08, 2010, when LeBron made the decision, all that good stuff, there was such a tenor shift in how we talk about superstars and winning in general. It has become a little bit too binary, in my opinion. And this is something that I've yelled about, in the void on Twitter. And then, as my platform has grown, I've still continued to yell about it. It's just weird. We should just be at a better place of appreciating basketball, period. And I do think there is this undercurrent of, well, Dame, you're not as great as you say you are if you don't have a ring. And I don't really think that's inherently true. It's absolutely going to be an additive, and it's a big achievement. You play to win a championship at the end of the day. But Dame has also just made it clear, I'm not defined by the ring. I'm defined by what I've done on the court, what I've done in the community first. If I have the ring, I want it and I want to win. But if I don't have that, that doesn't change who I am. And I absolutely respect that portion of it. And I think we all should.
Yeah, no, we absolutely should. It's just unique because typically the players that don't make a stink about or don't put pressure on their organization, they don't have to put pressure on their organization. Or at least it doesn't have to be public because they're in sync and they're approaching it the same way. Okay? But I can't name a player, an all-time great player. I can't think of an all-time great player whose appetite to win was so insatiable that they wouldn't get a coach fired, that they wouldn't demand a trade. I mean, maybe Dirk. Maybe Dirk was the only guy that just kind of stayed the course and didn't make us think about it until he finally broke through. I can't really think of an all-time great that there was not a trade threat or trade demand made, whether it was met or not, that didn't make a trade demand, that didn't hold the organization's feet to the fire some way, somehow. Obviously, you could add Jokic to that list if you wanted somebody else who stayed the course. So there are a few precedents of superstars who've just been like, I'm here, I'm going to trust the organization to do what they have to do. But more often than not, at some point, their biological clock starts Marissa Tomei and my cousin Vinny ticking like this. And it's like, here's Damian Lillard. It's like, bro, again, we can't want something more for you than you want for yourself. Do you not see that it ain't happening in Portland? So if you really want it to happen, sorry to be our broken record, if you really want it to happen, like, bruh, it ain't happening here. And you can't play forever at this level. So if you want to be a headliner still, and more specifically, if you don't want, I don't know, the Heat to have to give up, a Duncan Robinson instead of a Victor Oladipo, hey, you might want to get a move on before July 1st. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you actually want to do this before everybody else just moves on and finds another dance partner, stop doing this dance year after year, because what's going to end up happening, if he gives him, it's going to come up again at the trade deadline this year, or it's going to come up again next offseason, and he's going to be a year older. You know what I'm saying? And it's just, right. And then it becomes, well, you just ring chase toward the end of your career. Then and even though he did win a championship, then one day, who knows, you might be Bill Walton on the Celtics sideline waving a towel. You know what I'm saying? Like, you won it in Portland already, so it's not the same thing. But it's like, it feels like now or never. So I'm with you. I'm a little fatigued by it. But what I'm more fatigued by, I think where you and I differ, you're more fatigued by the outside noise. I'm more fatigued by the indecision, or so it seems, about, do you really want to win? He is decisive and convicted in wanting to win in Portland, but I don't know that he wants, I'll revise what I said because it did sound harsh earlier. I don't know that he wants to win in general, or that they want to win in general, but umpteen time, if they both did, they would realize by now that the best path to do so is apart.
I got you. And I'll just quickly add, I think this offseason is a real inflection point on a couple of fronts in this situation, and maybe why the noise feels a little bit different this year, because with the new CBA being ratified or coming ratified soon, and those, the second apron and all that good stuff really going into effect next offseason, this kind of has to be the summer in which teams can, just from a salaries going out perspective and stuff like that, this is the summer to make the Dame trade if you can do it, because it just becomes a whole lot more difficult if not. And then going back to how the season ended for Portland this year and getting the number 3 pick, that felt like a flashbulb. Okay, we build around Dame, or we take this stud in the top 3, because we may not be drafting this high again, and especially not drafting this high again in a class like this. And so that's where I think maybe if there was ever a time for the stuff to feel real and to not consider Dame comments as any kind of leverage play, if you are actually putting salt into this would be the offseason to do it, because from a trade perspective, in a literal sense, it just becomes a whole lot more difficult next season, because there are going to be new rules in effect in the CBA. And as you mentioned, Damian Lillard is going to be a year older. His salary is going to be higher because it's just another year into the contract. And I think it's north of $60 million at the last year of his contract. If he does ask out, it's just going to be even tougher for teams to do it, even if he actually wants it at this point. So I think that's part of why it feels more real. So I'm curious to see what Portland does on the free agent front. Also, just to answer your earlier question, in terms of what they could do, I don't know if there's anything significant out there for them. I think honestly, they're
Karl Anthony Towns. That's not real, right?
I don't think they can get there. Not for what it would cost, because they would be trying to get Yusuf Nurkic out of there, and that's not an attractive contract around the league. And in order to get a cat, it's going to cost you. They're not giving up Scoot. I would imagine Minnesota asked for Shaden, and I don't think Portland's going to want to do that. So I don't even know if that's feasible. But I do think, zooming out, they're probably looking at the Denver formula in the sense of, okay, we don't need an elite defense. We need a defense that can solve specific problems in the playoffs, and that's what Denver ended up working towards. And if we have enough offensive firepower, which Dame was at worst a top 5 offensive player in the year last year, and depending on what metrics you look at, that's top 3 or number 1. We have that foundation in Dame, who guarantees you a top 10 offense. Anthony Simon's one of the best pull-up shooters in the league, if they keep him. Shaden, interesting offensive flashes. We know Scoot's going to be a walking paint touch. I would imagine they bring Jeremy Grant back, who can shoot, can also isolate some. I think they're going to be looking at that formula of, we will be a top 5 offense, and if we can get the defense to 18th, if we can get it to 20th, and get the right matchups, we can make a run with Supernova Dame. I think that's the thinking. Now, I think we're both in the same mind that we don't think that's realistic for them. I don't think either of us have Portland winning a title next season, and I'll just hold the L if they do somehow. But I think that's where the logic comes from, and I can see how they get there. I think that's a 2% chance, but I can see how they get to that 2%.
Well, we would all hold the L as a basketball community if he sticks this thing out and manages to somehow break through and win a championship in Portland. That'd be epic. That'd be storybook, and we would all have a lot of egg on our face and be eating a lot of words, both written and tweeted, and said, including this podcast. They're not getting Draymond Green, right? Just that's the other free agent I'm most fascinated by. I mean, Harden will get a bag and not show up for the playoffs. Kyrie will go back to Dallas. The only other person I'm kind of interested in is Draymond, but he's definitely going back to Golden State. This Kings thing is smoke, and he's not going to Portland, right?
I'll put it like this, 'cause I sprinkled this in at the end of our latest when I was talking to Steve on the pod. And it's like, do we think Golden State and Portland are going to attempt to do a trade with each other based on everything that just happened with the Gary Payton II situation? And the medical that wasn't the medical and all this? I would find it hard to believe that, one, Draymond leaves Golden State, and considering they just traded Jordan Poole to clear some money, get some breathing room underneath the
and bring in Chris Paul. Like, they're all in on running it back. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I would just be surprised from that standpoint. And then beyond that, like, I just don't see those two teams getting into trade negotiations for a little bit after as nasty as that stuff got. I would be surprised.
Yeah. Well, look, we'll leave the Dame Lillard conversation alone for today. I'm sure, it won't go anywhere. But bottom line is, this way, the way he's doing it, he can't fail. He may not ever win, but he can't lose either. And again, it's brilliant branding. Speaking of super teams, let's switch over to the W, a league that you cover every bit as passionately and effectively as you do the NBA. Aces of the field. Is there any stopping the Aces? Now, I recognize that their one loss this season was to the Sun, but I look at Kelsey Plum coming along and finding her stroke after some early season struggles. I look at the progression that Candace Parker is making. I mean, they're on pace to break every significant advanced analytics record known to man in the WNBA. It's like, who's stopping these people?
Like, I think the answer you would get from the locker room from Becky Hammond would be themselves. And I think you just keep an eye on the Aces defense, which naturally, as of recording right now, the Aces have the second best defense in the W. And there was a stretch where they were number one in offensive and defensive rating. But I think if you're asking me Aces or the field, I am picking the Aces. I do think they are the best team in the W. And the fact that they currently have the best offensive rating in WNBA history right now, with Kelsey Plum just now coming along, with Candace Parker just now coming along. This is also with Jackie Young and Chelsea Gray both flirting with 50% marks from three, which is insane. But they've been working through some stuff in the half court, and they have still been a buzzsaw offensively. There are enough chinks in the armor to where if they get the Sun in a playoff series, or if they get the Mystics in a playoff series, if the Mystics figure out their 11th ranked offense, which I've ranted enough about that on my timeline in the pod, I'm not going to do that here. But if they're able to get enough together, there's enough that you can do against the Aces to slow them down. And so, like, there's a pathway to the Sun to beat the Aces in a playoff series. There's a pathway to the Mystics to beat the Aces in a playoff series. I would not pick either of those teams against the Aces.
Right, you wouldn't bet on it.
I'm not at – I have the door closed. I don't have the door closed and locked, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I mean, they are running roughshod over the league right now. It's really fascinating to see a defending champion come back with this type of urgency and vengeance, almost like they got the chip on their shoulder, and it's just scary the way that they're getting better as the season has gone along. So before I let you go, and you gonna be in Vegas. Let's talk about the center of the basketball universe. You got Summer League. Obviously, we're talking about the Aces. You got WNBA All-Star Game. I mean, like, I hope to see you in Vegas. Let's put it that way. Hopefully, I can get on the plane and get out there. But before I let you go, I want to ask you about the Sparks, because I have both Lexi Brown and Zaya Cook coming up, and I'm talking to them about obviously Lexi's career journey, Zaya's career just getting started, and really the challenges for young players, even top 10 draft picks. In the WNBA in particular, but I'd also like to get your thoughts on just whether the Sparks could be dangerous. Another great story is Destiny Henderson, hooping on his hardship contract. But could the Sparks could they be interesting as the season goes on and as they get whole and they build some chemistry? But even just as we transition into those two interviews, just if you could speak to the challenges of young players in the WNBA and the quick turnaround from college to the pros and how hard it is for them to find their footing.
Got you. On the Sparks front, well, first and foremost, I just hope Lexi's okay. She's been out for a while with a non-COVID illness. That's what's been listed on the injury report. So just hope she's okay generally, first and foremost. For the Sparks, they are interesting to me because of the level of versatility that they have on the roster when healthy. Like Nneka Ogwumike just quietly having the best season of her career right now, which has been fun. De'Erica Hamby rounding back into form. Still trying to Azurá Stevens still trying to find her footing, but she's one of the most intriguing young players in the league, bar none. Like a player her size should not be able to handle the way that she does, not be able to shoot the way she does. I'm waiting on her to round into form. I think interesting is as far as I can take it right now, just because the offense has just been so hit or miss aside from Nneka. And some of that is just the guard play and the guard play not being available. Again, Lexi's been out. Jasmine Thomas, she's currently finding her footing. She's at most of last season with the ACL tear. So I think there's just so much in flux. It's hard to see them like completely threading the needle on what the roster could be. Because if they are healthy and they are in tow, like you have a star in Nneka. And you have a bunch of 2 or 3 big lineups you can throw out and shrink the floor, and you can switch all over the place. I love watching them ramp up the intensity and the aggression on defense. They can just put 2 to the ball and rotate behind that. They're really fun. But there are just enough question marks with the availability and then just the perimeter room in general where I'm like, okay, they are an interesting team. I can't get to like contending yet.
Yeah.
So I'll just see. Yeah. So that's kind of where I am on the Sparks right now, which naturally means they're going to make some big trade before the deadline. And then that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, and what does contending mean in a league with, like we talked about, the Aces, the Sun, and for that matter, the Liberty? But quickly on just for those that may not understand how difficult it is for even the most high-profile and successful college players to transition into the WNBA, make the team, stick with their original team, and have a long career.
Oh, it's very difficult, and we'll just throw out the caveat for the anomaly real quick. Aaliyah Boston's already one of the best players in the league. What she's doing is absolutely insane, but it generally does not go the way Aaliyah Boston makes it look. As you mentioned earlier, the turnaround time is tough for players. Like the draft is there, and then 2 weeks later, the season starts. You don't really get there's no summer league. Preseason games, teams may play 2, but that's kind of it. And then once you factor in the league itself, only 12 teams, there are only a certain amount of roster spots available, and then it is a hard cap in the WNBA. So with that being said, it just becomes prioritizing. It becomes prioritizing like the vets. It also is prioritizing anyone you can find. Like I think back to the Rebecca Gardner signing Chicago made last year, and she broke out, but she was someone that was playing overseas for a while. And James Wade was able to bring her in on a contract that's just below her value. But because she didn't have the W experience, they get her there, and she ends up becoming one of the best defenders in the league, really good backup point guard for Chicago. They just prioritize, after your top-end talent, they just prioritize how can we get good players or valuable people in the organization without getting hit with the hard cap. And so that's where, if as a rookie, again, it's a small league. It's 12 teams, at most 144 players. And so as a rookie, you kind of have to be a top 40, top 50 player, or your team has to believe you can get there within year 2 to even garner the roster. To even garner the roster spot. And that's why we see this year, multiple top 10 players were waived before the season. It's we have our roster already. And you may be good, but there isn't a pathway for you to get 18 minutes a night in year 1 and then 22 minutes in year 2 and then 2. So it just becomes really difficult to find your footing. And so that's why we look at Destiny Henderson. She had some interesting flashes last year, but Indiana drafts Grace Berger. They also have other guards, like Kelsey Mitchell is still a star there, so she's getting a bunch of playing time. I was surprised that they waived Destiny, and I was even more surprised that she was on the market as long as she was. But what she's doing to Sparks is a prime example of, oh, no, you're not a free agent because you're bad. You are a free agent because we have a finite number of resources and growth opportunities on the roster. And if we prioritize someone's development over yours, you may not be bad. It's just a numbers game at that point. So it's really tough. I really feel for the players, and I hope we do get, if not full blown expansion, we should get that. We need roster expansion very quickly. We need to go from 12 to 15 teams. And I hope the financials of the league improve to the point to where we can get that very soon because we need it. League's too talented.
You need to follow Nekias Duncan on Twitter. As you just heard, one of the best basketball minds in the business. Also, subscribe to and listen to the Dunker Spot podcast. Brother, man, thank you so much for falling through. Coming up, we're going to hear from Lexi Brown, who's managed to survive that difficult journey in the WNBA and be thriving. We know she's out sick right now, but been thriving with the Sparks, along with former South Carolina star and now Sparks rookie Zia Cook. But Nekias, thanks for kicking us off, man. Appreciate you.
Thanks for the kind words. Thanks for having me, man. Hope to see you in Vegas.
Hey, thanks so much for kicking it with your main man, Michael Smith. Be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel, but also subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Rate it, review it, tell your friends about it. Oh, and be sure to follow me on social media.